In episode 5, Colin and Penelope rush into the Bridgerton household, and Colin announces, "We are engaged." And all of the Bridgertons, especially Hyacinth, they're pumped. Except Eloise. She's pissed. She's hurt. You can see it in her face. She storms out of the room. And Penelope goes to chase after her because she does want to remain friends with Eloise, even though Eloise is still mad at her. And Eloise isn't so much mad about the Whistledown thing. She feels like Penelope had just played her this entire time, as if Penelope was only friends with Eloise to get to her brother. She had no idea that Penelope even had feelings for Colin in the first place, so to Eloise, this is yet another example of betrayal. And what she's really concerned about is the fact that her brother will eventually find out who Whistledown is. And as she tells Penelope, "Until my brother finds out the real you, he can't possibly love you." Penelope knows that deep down, Eloise is correct. She needs to tell Colin, but she just begs for a little bit of time to find the right moment to do so. When Penelope goes home that night, though, Eloise isn't even on her mind. She just can't wait to write the next edition of Whistledown to announce the engagement of Penelope Featherington and Colin Bridgerton. Whistledown is actually how Benedict found out, because he had stayed the night at Lady Arnold's place. But he wasn't the only Bridgerton guy that was out of the loop for the engagement announcement. Anthony had returned home with Kate, and he's got really exciting news. Kate's pregnant. But when he walks in the house, everybody's excited because the big news, at least in their mind, is the fact that Colin is engaged. And not wanting to steal Colin's moment, Kate and Anthony decide, okay, we're gonna just chill on announcing and trying to steal his shine. The engagement announcement, though, does come as a big surprise to Anthony. He's really surprised, actually. Anthony wants to make sure that his brother is making sound decisions, so he, along with Benedict, take Colin over to Mondrich's club, and they just sit him down and make sure that all of this isn't coming so quickly. And Colin explains that while it seems like it's coming quickly, it's really not. He's known Penelope for years. He always felt something for her, he just didn't realize what that was until recently. But no, he's of sound mind. Whistledown, by the way, is also how the Featheringtons found out about this engagement, and it doesn't sit well with Lady Featherington. She's pissed. She's pissed off because in her eyes, her daughter squandered a golden opportunity with Lord Debling. And quite frankly, she can't understand this relationship between Penelope and Colin. She starts browbeating Penelope while also trashing the Bridgerton name, and she feels like Penelope must have entrapped Colin, but that's when Colin storms in and interrupts all of this, putting a stop to it. Sticking up for Penelope and telling Portia to basically shut up because she doesn't know what she's talking about. It is a love marriage. He does love Penelope. She didn't entrap him. He's doing this because he wants to, and nothing more. And it's pretty clear to Colin that Portia doesn't see in Penelope what he does, which is an amazing person. And then he takes Penelope out of there. He takes Penelope to where they are going to live. He starts showing her a bunch of things, but she's just in awe. And not at the house. She's in awe because she's never had anybody in her life stick up for her the way that Colin just did. She's flat out infatuated with him at this point. And that's when, even though they're not supposed to, the fire burns for each other. And they start stripping down clothes, taking off pantaloons. Corsets fly off, and Colin Bridgerton takes Penelope Featherington's virginity. It's hot, yet for her, it's pretty painful. Because, it's the first time. Though, unlike my first time, there's no crying and apologizing. Anyway, while Colin was banging Penelope's brains out, back at the Bridgerton household, Penelope's old best friend Eloise is just sitting and having a think. And that's when Kate decides to intervene. Kate's trying to be the Viscountess now that she's back, planning some things, but she's also a sister-in-law, and she can see when Eloise is being bothered by something, so she goes to have a talk with her. Eloise tells Kate that, yeah, she's been thinking about Penelope, and she's not surprised that she kept a secret. She's done that before, but what she's surprised about is the fact that it's about Colin. But what also hurts is the fact that everybody's pairing off, and she's once again alone. Kate's advice to Eloise is tell Colin how you feel, tell him why you're pissed off, because eventually it'll help. A little while later, Colin and Penelope are heading back to Bridgerton House, or Featherington House, they live right across the street from each other, when they notice a commotion in the street. A bunch of the Queen's men are handing out pamphlets, and Colin decides to stop and grab one, and that's when Penelope's world comes crashing down. Because the Queen has decided to take action against Lady Whistledown. The Queen has always had this love-hate relationship with Whistledown, this cat-mouse game that they play. The Queen actually loves Lady Whistledown and her drama, but she does hate the fact she doesn't know who she is. So she decided to put a bounty on Lady Whistledown's head. $5,000, which is a ton. And for Penelope, that's horrible news because there are a couple people that do know who she is, and obviously Eloise is one of those people. She doesn't know who she's told. But it's also really bad news for Penelope when Colin, upon reading it, says, good. Lady Whistledown's going to get what she deserves. And as it turns out, Penelope was actually planning on telling Colin she was Whistledown until he stopped to read this pamphlet. Penelope's going to have to figure out what to do, and when they get home, they both go their separate ways. That night, Colin is approached by Eloise about the relationship with Penelope. And Eloise tells him how she feels, just like Kate advised her to. She's pissed off that this is happening, especially because Colin knows that Eloise and Penelope are at odds right now. And Colin apologizes, but he does tell his sister, I'm sorry, but I love her. He also asks for Eloise's blessing, which he doesn't wait for an answer because he wants to get her in a good mood, so he says, actually, I have a gift for you. And then he shows Eloise the Queen's pamphlet on the Whistledown bounty. Yes, the bounty is the talk of the town. It seems like everybody thinks that it's only a matter of time before Lady Whistledown is now found out. It's especially awkward for Penelope because that night her sisters are talking about how exactly you discovered Lady Whistledown. And by the way, I haven't mentioned this yet, but it's worth mentioning that both sisters think they are pregnant at this point. So they're just kind of sitting back and eating food. But as they're discussing how easy it would be for the Queen to figure out who Whistledown is, Penelope comes in the room and says, no, she's way too careful for that. The sisters, though, then ask Penelope, how exactly did you get Colin Bridgerton? And that's when, to the surprise of everybody, Portia walks in the room and says, no. We've been acting uncouth of late. We are Featherington ladies. We support each other, which they've never, ever done. But while Penelope was away, Portia had some time to think about the relationship. She had no idea it was a love marriage, and Varley did advise her that a match with the Bridgerton household would be good. So, in a matter of a couple hours, Portia Featherington has done a complete 180 on this relationship. While this might put Penelope in a good mood, it doesn't. She kind of sees right through it. She's also, though, heavily stressed out, and she retires to her room to write the latest edition of Whistledown. The edition comes out the next day, everybody reads it, but everybody's also getting ready for that night's ball, which is to be held at the Bridgerton household. Everybody of standing shows up. That includes Cressida, who unfortunately seems to have found a husband, although she's not a fan of him. He's one of her dad's friends. The guy is ancient. He's pushing probably 70. He wants kids. It's nothing that Cressida wants. She needs to figure out how to get out of this arranged marriage, and she asks Eloise for help, but Eloise is a little preoccupied at the moment. As Cressida is explaining all of this to Eloise, Eloise can't take her eyes off of Penelope and her brother, so finally she leaves the conversation with Cressida and her problems and goes and addresses Penelope one-on-one and says, either my brother is very understanding or you haven't told him yet. And Penelope admits, no, I haven't told him, I haven't found the right moment. And Eloise cuts her off and says, you have till midnight. And if you don't tell him by midnight, I'm going to tell him. So now Penelope is really stressed out. Most of the rest of the party is drama-free for the couples. Benedict shows up with Lady Tilly Arnold. Violet Bridgerton did invite Marcus, although Lady Danbury's not a fan of that. And Francesca introduces Lord Kilmartin to her brother. And once Francesca and Lord Kilmartin kind of leave within earshot, Antony, Violet, and Lady Danbury all talk about this relationship. They like Lord Kilmartin, but they'd like somebody better to get Francesca out of her shell. It just seems like Lord Kilmartin is too much like Francesca. And there's also the matter of the Queen. The Queen already picked who she wants Francesca to marry. They don't really want to piss her off. But for the time being, they're willing to just let Francesca play this out until they have to step in. Colin then gives up and gives a speech about his engagement to Penelope. Eloise also gives a speech, although it's dripping with innuendos to Penelope that she needs to tell Colin that she is Lady Whistledown. And then everybody gets together in the drawing room to play charades. As the clock ticks down, though, Eloise is getting more and more annoyed because she sees that Penelope is yet to tell her brother. And as she's standing there, just looking angry, Cressida comes up and says, okay, I thought of a great plan on how I'm not going to have to marry this old guy. I'm going to find out who Lady Whistledown is, and I'm going to collect that reward. And Eloise kind of laughs at her and says, you're not going to be able to figure out who she is. I mean, even I couldn't figure out who she is. And Cressida kind of takes that as an insult. She tells Eloise that she will find a way to obtain that reward, and she storms off. No, all Eloise cares about, though, is that clock ticking down. And when it's about 5 minutes away from reaching midnight and reaching Eloise's deadline, it's getting more and more awkward for Penelope, who can't seem to find a way to tell Colin. And what makes it even worse is the fact that the room is now talking about Whistledown. Penelope realizes that she's going to have to tell Colin, or else Eloise will live up to her end of this bargain. She runs off for a little bit. When she comes back, she's almost ready to tell him. She's trying to, at least. And that's when Cressida steps up. Because Cressida was involved in a conversation with a bunch of the other people in the room. And they were saying how whoever Whistledown ends up being, she's probably going to be ostracized from society and no one's going to want to marry her. And that's exactly what Cressida wants. So at the moment that Penelope is about to tell Colin that she is Lady Whistledown, Cressida stands up and announces to the entire room, I am Lady Whistledown. To which Penelope has a panic attack over. Oh, and finally, Kate and Antony tell Violet that they're expecting a child. And in episode 6, the entire town is abuzz over Cressida saying that she's Lady Whistledown. And while this should be a relief to Penelope because, well, Cressida just took credit for something that became a big burden on Penelope, it's not a relief at all. In fact, it pisses off Penelope. She starts writing her edition of Whistledown, just disparaging Cressida, saying how she's a liar, but she can't quite find the words to it. Now, she's more insulted about the fact that her bully growing up is taking credit for her creation. But it's not like everybody believes that Cressida is Lady Whistledown. Colin, for one, doesn't believe it. He goes over to the Featherington household that morning to tell Penelope, I know that you've been trying to tell me something, and I just want to let you know, whenever you're ready, no rush. But then he starts asking her, do you really think that Cressida could be Whistledown? I just don't see it. And Penelope, of course, says, no, I don't see it either. But Cressida's own mother doesn't believe it either. Now, her father, he is disgusted by her behavior. He wants to send her away to Scotland to live with one of her aunts. He can't believe that she is the town gossip, but her mother knows her daughter, and her mother knows that her daughter just isn't witty enough and observant enough to be Lady Whistledown. As her mother is telling her all of this, the Queen's men come to gather up Cressida and bring her to the castle. The Queen wants to talk to her. When Cressida does get in front of the Queen asks why exactly she decided to turn herself in. I mean, for $5,000, you would think that she was making way more than that just selling the pamphlet herself. And Cressida, thinking quickly on her feet, says, well, I didn't want someone else getting paid over my name, so I'll take that reward money. But the Queen isn't about to just hand it over to Cressida. She wants proof. She wants to read the latest edition of Whistledown before it goes out, which means that Cressida is going to have to write a Whistledown issue herself, which, quite frankly, she's not capable of. As Cressida and her mother are leaving the castle, they know they have to figure out something, because Cressida's options are come up with a Whistledown issue, get the $5,000, and be able to live on her own, or get cast out of society, move to Scotland, and be a spinster. Neither are great right now. Now over at the Bridgerton household, Colin at this point has returned, and there's big news. Francesca announces that her and Lord Kilmartin will be getting married. But with this announcement, it gets Eloise just thinking about her brother's upcoming wedding. And now her brother still doesn't know the truth. So later in the day, she goes and has a conversation with her brother because she knows her brother went to talk to Penelope earlier in the day, and she wants to poke around and see if Penelope did tell Colin about the whole Whistledown thing. But it becomes apparent that no, she did not tell Colin the truth. And Colin asks Eloise, did you know about Cressida being Whistledown? Eloise shakes her head and says, no, I didn't. I mean, the friendship was already souring, but this was the last straw. Eloise does tell her brother, I will go talk to the author, and I will see if maybe I can put an end to Lady Whistledown. She never once says Cressida because she doesn't want to lie to her brother, and later in the day, she goes and has a conversation with Penelope, who, ironically, is trying to edit her unsuccessful Whistledown pamphlet. She thinks that Penelope is crazy for not giving up Whistledown. I mean, this is her golden opportunity to get out of this lie. She implores Penelope to just be the bigger person, get over the fact that it was Cressida who took the fall, and just accept it. Retire Whistledown. Go live your life with Colin. Be happy. The two go back and forth on the topic, but once Eloise does leave, Penelope realizes that Eloise is right. She really should retire Whistledown's name. Later that night, as Penelope is sitting there with all of her Whistledown pamphlets, her mother comes into the room and gives her probably the worst time pep talk of all time about how she needs to give up on her dreams because she's marrying Colin, a man of stature and sophistication. And now her dreams are Colin's dreams. Because the way that Lady Featherton sees it, women are merely servants, and that is it. They are there to have babies and look good. Nothing more. They're not a mind at all. And that certainly isn't really appealing to Penelope, and it's one of the reasons why she created Whistledown. And to hear that from her mother and know she has to give up Whistledown in the same day, it's tough. And as for Colin, he spent the night at Mondrich's club, although unfortunately that club is closing. Alice got to Mondrich and convinced him that men of society do not work anymore, so it'll be the final hurrah. You've got Colin, you've got Benedict, and you've got Will along with Lord Kilmartin, and they just drink it up. Lord Kilmartin and Francesca do have a slight issue, though. They haven't announced that they're going to get married, and they want to address it with the Queen first because they know that Lord Kilmartin wasn't her preferred choice. They kind of need her blessing. It's something that's got Violet Bridgerton a little nervous, especially when Francesca asks Violet, hey, can you go talk to the Queen for us? That's something that Violet is terrified to do. And the next day when everybody's at the church and the betrothals are announced, you don't hear Lord Kilmartin or Francesca because of this. A couple that you do hear, though, is Penelope and Colin. And after the ceremony, Colin asks Penelope, hey, what was it, though, that you did want to tell me? And Penelope doesn't tell him anything about Whistledown. She just tells him that she has loved him since the moment she saw him. Outside of the church, though, as everybody's mingling, Eloise sees Cressida Cowper wearing basically camouflage. No, in all seriousness, she's trying to hide from society, but she's wearing Barbie pink. Stevie Wonder could spot her, and Eloise does. She walks over to Cressida to see what the hell she's doing, and Cressida has come because she needs Eloise's help in writing a Whistledown letter. She's already told Eloise about this marriage she doesn't want to be a part of, her plan to get the $5,000 bounty. And now, it looking more and more bleak, she just needs help. But even though Eloise knows that Cressida is not Lady Whistledown, she pretends as if Cressida is, and she refuses to help her out. While this is going on across the square, Lady Danbury is having a conversation with Violet about this whole going to the Queen and telling the Queen about the marriage between Francesca and Lord Kilmartin. It's true that Violet is nervous about asking the Queen, but she gets more nervous when Lady Danbury tells her that if the Queen even sniffs the fact that Violet isn't fully convinced this marriage will work, the Queen isn't going to give her blessing, which makes Violet not want to go up to the Queen even more. And the hesitancy is something that Francesca can see. She sees the difference in the way her mother acts when Colin and Penelope come over, as opposed to her and Lord Kilmartin. But for the moment, she's just kind of shutting up about it. Later in the week, it's Penelope's turn to finally go to the modiste for a dress. The modiste, being one of the few people that knows who Whistledown actually is, asks Penelope if she's told Colin about the Whistledown fact, but Penelope says, no, I'm actually going to let Cressida take credit for it. I'm retiring. You can tell that the modiste thinks that this might be a mistake. And as for Cressida, life is not going great right now. Her father's even more pissed off because he's gotten exiled from a couple of the clubs, and she's having a problem writing any kind of Whistledown-esque letter. It's been days since her and her mother have visited the Queen, and she's gotten no more than a couple of sentences. Her mother tells her, we got to publish something before the real Whistledown actually does publish a pamphlet, and then we're screwed. So the two get to work, and they start writing a Whistledown pamphlet, although it's not really a pamphlet, it's just more of a statement saying that her next issue will be coming out soon. That's really it. She's planning on debuting this at the next ball, which is actually going to be hosted by the Mondriches. It's the first time they are hosting a ball. But one person that won't be attending this is Benedict. He got invited to a dinner party by Lady Arnold along with her friend Paul. Although this dinner party gets spicy. Yeah, like we're talking, it's a threesome. Although no one told Benedict that. And while Benedict's been through orgies before, for whatever reason, when he gets invited to participate in this threesome, he runs away. Very surprising stuff. No word on if Paul laid the wood that night. You'd assume so, though. The rest of the Bridgertons, though, they're at the Mondrich's house for this ball. And as everybody dances around, Francesca asks her mother to go talk to the queen before the queen leaves, but once again, Violet just makes an excuse. Francesca, though, continues to push. Violet continues to push back, and the conversation comes to a head when Violet says, "I'm not trying to ruin things for you." And Francesca says, "Why would you ruin things? I mean, do you not think that me and Lord Kilmartin's relationship would make the queen happy?" Francesca calls her mom on her bullshit and says, "You haven't supported me with this marriage. You don't believe in it." Lady Bridgerton starts saying, "Look, Lord Kilmartin is wonderful, but..." And Francesca cuts her off and says, "But what? I love the guy." Violet is so upset at herself that she starts to leave the ball. She can't believe she's acting like this about a love match. And Marcus, who's been kind of courting her this entire season, chases after her, but he gets stopped by Lady Danbury. And those two finally get into it. He can't figure out why Lady Danbury hates him so much, what he did, and she tells him that what he did was get in the way of her dreams. Because right before she was married off to that old guy, she nearly escaped to freedom, but she was caught. And when she was brought back, she overheard her father thanking Marcus. So she feels like Marcus betrayed her. And you can see in Marcus's face that he does remember the moment, but he didn't realize the impact of whatever it is he told his father at that time. He tries to explain himself, but Lady Danbury ain't having any of it. She storms off. As those two exit, the drama arrives. Cressida and her mother show up, and they make quite an entrance. When they finally do get in front of the queen, they have a bunch of people bring in the Whistledown pamphlets, and it looks as if Cressida is, in fact, Whistledown. The queen, though, isn't convinced. She wants to see the next issue. And when she sees it, then she'll discuss the actual reward money with Cressida. When Penelope sees this fake pamphlet, she loses it. She gets so pissed off. Even though she accepted the fact that she should no longer be Lady Whistledown, she can't let this one slide. But she's not the only one who's upset, so is Eloise. She feels like Cressida is going to come after her because she ended their friendship. And now Cressida has a little bit of power, the entire town thinking she is Whistledown. She can, indeed, print a pamphlet. Penelope sits down with her and says, "I will fix this because I'm going to publish again." So she runs out of there, grabbing a carriage, and on the way to the printer, she writes the latest edition of Whistledown. She drops it off, she gets a rush order, but as she's walking back to the carriage, she's caught by Colin. And he is shocked, but also mad as hell that she is Lady Whistledown. In episode 7, Colin is understandably pissed. He can't believe that Penelope was Lady Whistledown this entire time. He followed her there thinking that her carriage driver had kidnapped her, but in reality, he never expected this, and he feels completely betrayed. He leaves Penelope just standing there on the side of the road, and he has to go have a think. As for the letter that she actually published that day, it comes out and it completely discredits anything that Cressida put in her letter, which was a pretty damning letter all about the Bridgertons. It besmirched their good name. It was really embarrassing. But once Penelope's Lady Whistledown comes out and says, Cressida's paper, that ain't me, she's not me, don't believe anything it says, it takes out any actual sting and no one believes her. Because of this, it looks like Cressida is going to be spending her days with her aunt, which she obviously wanted to avoid. The next day, though, as everybody is reading Penelope's Whistledown and the town is abuzz about what happened with Cressida, Penelope, along with her family, are heading to look at a location for the breakfast they're going to have the morning that she's married to Colin. She, however, is just not in the right headspace because all she can think about is what happened with her and Colin the previous day. And as her mother, and her sister are walking to this location, she runs into Eloise and she tells her, "Yeah, your brother knows. He's really pissed off and we're supposed to marry this week if he wants to, but I kind of doubt it at this point." Eloise tells her, "Look, I can't help you with this," because Eloise still isn't sure how she feels about the relationship between her brother and her former but quasi-current best friend. She's just very conflicted on it, and Penelope understands. And when Eloise gets home that day, she's confronted by Colin, who demands to know when she found out, because Colin knows that if anybody knew that Penelope was Lady Whistledown, it would be Eloise. And Eloise admits, "I only found out last year, and because of it, I just didn't want to deal with it, so I stopped being friends with her." Colin's pretty pissed off about it, but then Eloise goes back at him for falling in love with her best friend. And she goes on to explain that she figured after a while, what did it really matter that Penelope was Lady Whistledown? She wasn't about to tell her brother and ruin his wedding and his love for her best friend. What good would that do? As for Penelope, at this point, she's shown up at the location where they're supposed to have their wedding day breakfast, but it's really awkward between her and Colin, and it's noticeable from both Lady Featherington and Lady Bridgerton. While they plan for this breakfast, over in the corner, Colin and Penelope have an uncomfortable conversation where he says that he will marry Penelope, but it's only because he's a man of honor, he said he would, and he feels entrapped. When he asks her if she's planning on stopping the Whistledown pamphlet, she's honest with him and says, I don't know. And he looks at her completely amazed. He then collects his thoughts and says, let's just get through this wedding and figure out what this marriage is going to be. But this isn't the only awkward interaction that happens that day between a couple. As Violet and Colin had headed out for the day, Benedict had gotten a letter from Lady Tilly Arnold that said, hey, let me explain what happened the night. And Benedict's willing to hear her out, and she says, look, what me and Paul have is kind of like what me and you have. Like, we're friends with benefits, all right? We like to get down with each other, use our mouths as fun places. The thing about Paul is he likes women, but he also likes men, and he thought that maybe, you'd be down for that. And Benedict tells her, like, I don't really do that, and she's fine with it. And she says, okay, but let me and you continue on our own. My staff's discreet. Go think about it. And thinking is exactly what his mother is doing when she got home later that day. She can't quite figure out why the relationship between her son and her future daughter-in-law has become so awkward, but her little brainstorming session gets interrupted when she gets a caller, and it's Marcus. She's surprised. She's also happy. She tells Marcus that the latest news is that her daughter Francesca is to be married to Lord Kilmartin. And he thinks that's great, but he does ask her, when you're done with those affairs with your daughter, do you think me and you could try something? And she's a little taken aback, surprised, but says, I'm not opposed to it. I just won't know if I'm into it until after that wedding is done. A couple days later is the wedding day, but before the wedding day, actually the night before the wedding, Penelope needs to go confide in the one person that really knew the whole time she was Whistledown, and that's the modiste. The person who made her wedding dress, although she's not really there for that. She's just there to talk about what she's going through at the moment, about to marry a guy that she's in love with, but doesn't quite love her back because of this betrayal. And as always, the modiste makes her feel a lot better, having a conversation about true love and all that. But as she's leaving, she runs into Colin in the middle of the night on the street. And Colin immediately wants to know what she's doing because it seems shady, but then he says, no, you know what, I don't want to know. And the two get into an argument because she says, well, what the hell are you doing out here? This argument rolls into Penelope trying to explain herself about the Whistledown papers, Colin not really buying any of it or not wanting to listen. Colin yells at her how foolish she's been. She says, well, I can take care of myself. And he says, well, then what good am I to you? And she yells at him, I love you. And that is when they just can't take it anymore. The sexual tension is too much. And they end up kissing. Colin throwing her against a wall in a darkly lit nook. His fingers once again going to work. But then a carriage drives by and they realize we probably shouldn't be doing this in public the night before our wedding. So I'm just going to put you in the carriage and I'll see you tomorrow. When Colin gets home later that night, he's surprised because Anthony and Kate are back. He expected to see him tomorrow, but he didn't expect him to see him tonight. And Kate tells him, we came back because your mother figured something was going on, and we just wanted to have a talk about marriage. And Colin is like, yeah, of course my mom figured out something was wrong. She knows everything. All right, lay it on me. And Kate tells him, marriage is difficult. It's not always easy. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. It's hard work, but you got to put that work in. Because ultimately, true love is worth that hard work. Gives Colin a lot to think about, and then he goes to bed. The next day, most of the town is getting ready to go to the nuptials between Colin Bridgerton, Penelope Featherington, and Lady Danbury is one of those people. As she's preparing to leave, she goes into one of the rooms of her house, and Marcus is waiting for her. And she's pissed off to see him. The last time these two spoke, she was leaving the ball and telling him off. And he came to truly explain himself. Yes, Marcus did end up telling on her as she was trying to escape, but Marcus was also 10 years old. He had no idea what he was doing. Had he known, he wouldn't have done it. But everything was taken out of context and just a big misunderstanding. And as the two talk it out, it seems like they're in a much, much better space. With Lady Danbury now realizing, yeah, I got really mad at a 10-year-old boy. Grow up, Lady Danbury. You know I love you. Lady Danbury then heads to the church, where a very nervous Penelope walks down the aisle. She doesn't know what kind of Colin she's walking down to. But as she's making her way down, Colin gives her a nod, and it puts her entire mind at ease. The two are married. It seems legitimate. It seems like the talk between Antony, Kate, and himself really hit home, and he seems just generally happy to be marrying Penelope. After the wedding, everybody heads over to the location of the post-wedding breakfast, and everybody's in good spirits. Even Penelope's sisters are complimentary of how she looks that day. It's very out of character. Not too far away from this complimentary fest is Lady Bridgerton and Lady Danbury. Danbury mentions to Violet how she and Marcus showed up together, but she's since lost them. And Violet loves hearing that because she knows that it means Lady Danbury made up with her brother. And Lady Danbury says, yeah, it felt good. Maybe you should try it, though. Looking at Kilmartin and Francesca. To which Violet says, yes, that is the plan. I have to fix that wrong. She actually has every intention of talking to the Queen, but Lady Danbury tells her, you might not want to do it right this second. The Queen's really hung up on trying to find out who Whistledown is, so I'll tell you when the moment's right. Actually, it seems like the only person that's not having a good time at this breakfast is Eloise. Her conflicted feelings about the relationship is just still getting at her, and Benedict has to remind her that just because her brother and her best friend married doesn't mean she's losing either of them. She has a special relationship with both, and that special relationship will continue. And even though that's a great pep talk, it doesn't quite work. Eloise has to leave the room. But that pep talk actually got Benedict thinking about the relationship that he has with Lady Tilly Arnold and this possible relationship with Paul. It's got him reconsidering what she talked about with him. Maybe he should give this thruple thing a try. Of course, last season we thought that there might be a thruple situation between Antony, Kate, and Kate's sister, Edwina. And of course, Edwina went off to marry, and she's currently in India. Kate's giving Antony an update, and she mentions how she would love to go back to India. And Antony says, then let's do it. Let's go back to India. Let's actually have our baby in India. Because our baby's always going to be a Bridgerton, but I want our baby to know that it's also a shawarma. And here Kate didn't think that she could love Antony anymore, but it turns out she could, because she loves that idea. And the two are planning on heading off to India and having their baby there. And then as for the actual happy bride and groom, they decide to buck the trend and dance at this breakfast to a violin concerto of You Belong With Me. It's a real bop. Everybody actually gets involved, including Lord Kilmartin and Francesca, which is a surprise. But Lord Kilmartin was encouraged by her brothers a couple nights ago to be bold. And his idea of being bold is dancing in public. Look, it's baby steps. But all this dancing gets interrupted when the Queen shows up. And the Queen didn't show up to get some bacon and eggs. No, she showed up because she feels like she figured out who Whistledown is. She instructs everybody, not named Bridgerton, to get out of the room. And since Penelope just married into the family, she's forced to stay. And once it's only her and the Bridgertons remaining, she tells them, I know that one of you is keeping a secret. And the longer you keep it, it's going to piss me off. So come forward and confess. Now, Francesca feels like she knows that the secret's about her and Lord Kilmartin. So she comes forward and says, it's me. I've been keeping the secret. I'm supposed to marry Lord Kilmartin. We kept it from you. I apologize. But, hey, can we get married? And the Queen looks at her and says, girl, I don't care who you marry, love marriage, arranged marriage. No. I know one of you is Whistledown. Because it's amazing. When Cressida published lies about this family, Whistledown came and defended that family at all costs. The only justification of this must be because she's one of you. She demands that Lady Whistledown step forward, but nobody does. Penelope's frozen, and Antony tells the Queen, I would know if Lady Whistledown was in my family. Of course, he's oblivious. And the Queen, not knowing exactly who it is, just has to accept this, but she does say, all right, well, I'll leave, but I'll find out soon enough who you are. After the queen does leave, Penelope pulls Colin aside and says, "I'm sorry, I didn't know what to do." And he tells her, "Well, I'm happy that you stayed silent, but this is a good sign that you need to give up the pamphlet. The longer you hide this, the longer this lie is going to hang over us." But Penelope doesn't want to give up Whistledown because she tells Colin, "Do you know what it's like to have no place that you can truly be yourself? No, you don't, because you're not a woman. You don't have to conceal who you want to be, but I do. And I am Whistledown, and I'm not going to change that." And Colin looks at her and says, "Well, I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to sleep on the sofa tonight." Yeah, the night that they get married, he's going to just hit up the love sack. It gets Penelope crying, and the only person she can turn to is her friend Eloise, who does comfort her in that moment. There is one Bridgerton getting laid that night, though, and it's Benedict. He had a good think about it. He heads on over to Tilly Arnold's house. Her, Tilly, Paul, they all get after it. It's hot, it's heavy, and it's going to piss off a lot of conservatives. But all this drama about Whistledown, we haven't talked about the fake one, Cressida, who's trying to figure out how she's going to avoid getting sent off to her aunts. She knows she's going to need money for that, so that night she starts looking around the printers to collect her payment for the Whistledown pamphlet that she sold. The problem is she doesn't really know what printer she went to, so she just starts going from printer to printer asking for payment, trying to figure out if that's the correct one. And the third one she goes to isn't the right one, but the guy says, "Yeah, you're not her, right? Because I used to work at a place that did print hers. My boss told me that she was a redhead. Just a normal redheaded girl." And that tips off Cressida enough to figure out who Whistledown really is. And in the season finale, Cressida heads right on over to the Featherington household the next day and confronts Penelope about it. Now, initially, Penelope denies, but Cressida continues on because she knows that Penelope is Whistledown. And what she wants is very simple. She wants double of what the queen was offering for the head of Whistledown to stay quiet. If she doesn't get double, then she's going to reveal exactly who Whistledown is to everybody, blowing Penelope's cover. Penelope kind of calls Cressida's bluff, saying, "Well, you don't have proof." But when Lady Featherington walks in the room and Cressida starts telling her, I mean, think about it. Your daughter's over here. She's pretty conspicuous. She hears all this gossip. I mean, how did you never figure it out? It puts the fear of God into Penelope. And when Cressida leaves, she's forced to admit to her mother, "Yes, I am Whistledown," which her mother reacts just like everybody else reacts when they find out that Penelope's Whistledown. She starts thinking about all the nasty things that Whistledown wrote about her or her family, and she gets pissed off. She's also really concerned about the fact that this would be grounds for an annulment. And Penelope yells at her mom, "I don't want to lie anymore. I've got to tell Colin about what Cressida is going to do." Meanwhile, Colin had headed over to his house to think about the ramifications of Penelope being revealed as Whistledown. And at this point, he doesn't know about Cressida. He's just thinking about the ramifications between Whistledown and the queen. And it's Eloise who has to come to him and say, "You'll survive. I mean, a year ago, people thought I was Whistledown, and look, I'm still here." As Eloise is trying to make Colin feel better about the situation, their conversation is interrupted by Lady Featherington and Penelope, who have come over to tell Colin about the Cressida blackmail. Penelope just wants to pay her off, pay the $10,000. She's got it after selling all those Whistledowns for all those years, which does come as a surprise to her mother and Colin and just about everybody in the room. But Colin says, "No, we're not paying this. I'll go over, I'll talk to Cressida, I'll talk her off the ledge, and I'll fix this mess. You guys sit tight." The problem is Colin doesn't fix the mess at all. Actually, he makes it worse. He pleads with Cressida to keep her mouth shut, but Cressida says, No, I'm not going to do that, Colin. Your family, you got, it's all easy for you. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to now want double. Instead of 10,000, I want 20,000. And I want your little wife to write a pamphlet fixing my good name. As Colin was getting rejected by Cressida, Penelope, Eloise, Lady Featherington, well, they had nothing to do but sit around and wait for his arrival to find out what she said. And it gets Penelope and Eloise chatting about Cressida. Eloise defending Cressida a little bit, just saying, yeah, she wasn't really that bad, but admitting that the friendship did start out because she just wanted to piss off Penelope. As the two are laughing about that and about to kick off the conversation of books, Colin walks back in the room and tells everybody, "Yeah, I done messed up. It's bad. Looks like Penelope might have been right. We probably should just pay her." And Penelope says, "Well, Colin, the problem is I have 10. I don't have 20. And Colin says, I'll get the money. I'll have to make up a lie about why I need the money, but yeah, I'll go halves in and we'll just keep this quiet. As Colin goes to sort his affairs out, his mother had a really busy day. She met with Francesca and Lord Kilmartin. They talked about the wedding, where Francesca told her mother, after we get married in a very small ceremony, we're moving to Scotland. We're going to live at Lord Kilmartin's place. And Violet, just wanting to be supportive, nods, but she's not happy about it. She doesn't want to lose her daughter. And that night, she confides in Lady Danbury that it just feels like her daughter's rushing to leave her. Lady Danbury, being a really good friend, tells Violet, you're going to have me at least. I mean, I'll always be there for you, as will my brother. This is a really awkward conversation between the two, where Lady Danbury admits to Violet that she hooked up with her dad years ago. Violet admits to Lady Danbury that she knew the whole time she didn't care because her dad was a good man and Lady Danbury's always been a really good friend. But because of that relationship with Danbury and Lord Bridgerton, she just wanted to let Violet know that she's okay if Violet were to pursue a relationship with Marcus. The moral of the story here is find a friendship like Violet and Lady Danbury. What I hope you don't find is the early stages of Penelope and Colin's marriage, because my dude's still sleeping on the sofa like 3 days in. They've yet to share a bed, and they have to head to Francesca's small wedding where Penelope tells Colin, I'll just let you go in your own carriage. I don't want to force you to be with me. She heads home to get ready and get dressed, but she overhears a conversation between her mother and Walter Dundas. Walter Dundas finally got the proof he needed to catch Lady Featherington in this lie. He's planning on sending his results to the castle, and when it's filed, the Featheringtons are going to lose their title. And Penelope can't believe this when she overhears the conversation. She really believed her mother had just inherited all this money from some aunt. But to find out that her mother had done this, on top of what she's going through with her own marriage, it's just a lot for poor Pen. And as Penelope confronts her mother confronts Penelope about the whole Whistledown thing. She basically tells Penelope, what I did and what you did, this deceit, it's no different. I did what I had to do to protect this family. Who are you protecting with your column? The conversation gets really, really contentious until finally it dies out. And Lady Featherington says, me and you did the best we could with the offerings that society gave us. She then makes a joke about what Lady Whistledown would write regarding their disgrace once she's exposed. And Penelope sits down next to her mother and says, she's going to write whatever I want her to write. And her mother looks at her daughter and says, that's a really great power that you've created for yourself. Penelope then heads over to the Bridgerton household where, in a small ceremony, Francesca marries Lord Kilmartin. And during cocktail hour, everyone's kind of noticing that Lord Anderson is smitten with Violet Bridgerton. But also nobody cares because Violet looks happy. And she is. She's also really nervous about this potential relationship between her and Marcus. That much is very obvious. She then shares a really nice moment with Francesca playing the piano, but as they're doing so, Penelope pulls Colin aside and says, I need to talk to you. She tells Colin, I can't ask you to lie for money on my behalf. And Colin says, how am I supposed to help you then? And she yells at him, by loving me. She goes into all the great things that Colin has done for her, but also the reasons why she loves Colin. And she finishes it off by saying, all I need from you is to stand by me. The problem for Colin is, as long as this lie is out there about Whistledown, there's always going to be something between he and Penelope that probably can't get fixed. And she understands it. So she's planning on putting an end to it. She writes to the Queen, and she tells the Queen, I am Whistledown, but let me address society before you expose me. She also writes a letter to Violet, kind of saying the same thing, just saying, I have been hiding this secret. If you want, you can ask your son about it. To which Colin tells his mother the entire story. Now, for the Bridgertons, just a matter of waiting for the Queen to show up and give Penelope her chance to tell society who Whistledown really is. It's just a matter of playing the waiting game at this point. One thing that Benedict is not waiting for is another chance at Lady Tilly Arnold and her friend Paul. He heads over to Lady Tilly Arnold's place to find out that Paul is busy with somebody else that night. And Tilly takes that opportunity to have a conversation with Benedict about how she's having feelings for him. She didn't expect it, but it happened. And Benedict appreciates it, but the problem is this relationship, this throuple situation, has really opened his eyes to a sexual renaissance for Benedict. And it's a sexual renaissance that he's not willing to give up at the moment. He's having too much fun having sex with all sorts of people. And Tilly understands it, and she's going to respect his wishes, but she does say it felt really good to kind of commit to somebody. So Benedict's forced to head home. He didn't get laid, and he finds his sister Eloise sitting on the swing having a think. Benedict's always taking these opportunities to sit and chat with his sister and find out what's going on in her head and try to make her feel better in the moment, this being no different. At the moment, the thing that's bothering Eloise the most is the fact that she wants to change the world, but she realized that she's never been outside of her town. In order to change the world, she has to see the world. After talking with Benedict, and it's not like he gave her this idea, but she comes to the conclusion that she really wants to go off with her sister and Lord Kilmartin to Scotland. It's a baby step in seeing the world, and she's planning on asking him the next day. The next day is going to be a big ball held by both Prudence and Portia, because since they're both pregnant, they realize that they don't have a lot of time left in society to kind of turn up, if you will. So they want to throw a huge ball. The problem is they were hard up on money. They had grandiose ideas, but they didn't have a grandiose bank account. They were forced to give their ideas to Farley and hope to God that she kind of saw their vision. And once they see what Farley did, they're blown away, because Farley did, in fact, see their vision, and it was an expensive one. So, of course, they just start thanking their mother profusely for paying for it all. And Lady Featherington is very confused until she looks back at her daughter, Penelope, and sees a wry smirk on her face. Penelope took her money from Whistledown, and she gave her sisters the ball that they would want. She also took no credit for it and gave all the credit to Lady Featherington, which is something that Lady Featherington really appreciated. It's such a big ball that the entire town turns out for it, which gives the Queen a really good audience to take Penelope up on her offer. She interrupts the entire ball. She tells the crowd that Lady Whistledown reached out and she wants to reveal herself to everybody. And then she gives the floor to Penelope. Penelope comes forward, very nervous, very sheepish, but she explains to everybody why she was whistled down, how she was impressed by the fact that they were just all being themselves and she could be in the shadows and kind of live vicariously through them. And at first, she didn't think that anyone would care about her writing, but once people did care, it gave her a sense of power. And anybody who's ever had power understands that that's a pretty intoxicating feeling. At the end of this long speech where she felt like she'd be ripped apart, nobody really cares. The thrill of finding out who Whistledown is was kind of taken away with Cressida. Even though that turned out to be the wrong Whistledown, once the real one was revealed, it was like, okay, what's next? This also took away all power that Cressida Cowper had, so she's forced to go off with her aunt. But most importantly, it gives the Featheringtons an excuse on why they came in all that money. Penelope goes to her mother and says, now you can tell Walter Dundas that you were able to afford this lifestyle because of my writing. The ball continues to go on. Everybody seems to have a good time. And Colin, at one point, walks up to Penelope and tells her that before that night's ball, he reread all of the love letters that she had written to him when he was away. At the time, he didn't know that they were love letters, but what it did was reinvigorate that flame that he had for her. He loves her. He wants to be with her. It's a very happy ending. It's also going to be a happy ending for Eloise, who asks Francesca if it's cool if she comes to Scotland, and Francesca's like, yeah, that's fine with me. And it's actually Lord Kilmartin who's really pumped about it. But Eloise won't be the only one coming to Scotland with them. Lord Kilmartin's cousin, Michaela, will also be coming. And when Michaela gets introduced to Francesca, Francesca is really, really taken aback, at a loss for words. It seems like, it seems like she's kind of got a crush. The next day, Penelope writes her final edition of Whistledown. She thanks all the readers, but she says, I'm hanging up my quill. Fast forward a couple months later, all the Featherington girls had babies. The only one that had a boy, though, was Penelope, because Colin Bridgerton knows how to go deep. And as for Colin, he took Penelope's advice and he published that book. And it's really good. It's getting rave reviews. And that is the end of Season 3 of Bridgerton. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. I really appreciate it. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you like this. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this recap sucked. What I don't want you to do, though, is write nasty comments because those make me feel bad. You aren't Lady Whistledown. You don't need to be rude, okay? I will find you. I will hunt you down. No, I'm not going to do any of that. I don't have enough time and resources. But I'm just asking politely, please don't be mean. Also, go buy a t-shirt. I have those and mugs and hats and all that. I got bills to pay, so that would be cool too. But just know, I'll be back for Season 4.